You're listening to Objections with Stan Willis. I'm Michael Morris. With me, the Colonel, Stan Willis. Sorry,
you mean like a piece of corn?
No,
what are we talking
the Colonel.
about?
Like I watched Elvis the other day, and I'm
You
like,
watched Elvis?
yeah, I'm like, who would lie to me the most? The Colonel, Stan Willis. How are you?
I'm over here ready to lie to you, I guess.
Perfect. I want to talk about liars.
I've never actually been in the armed forces, so
You've been in the unarmed forces?
I don't know how
You were in the Salvation Army?
The rank of colonel.
If somebody watches this show or listens to it for the first time, I want to build it up that you're like this larger than life figure, and I think everybody knows what a colonel is.
Yeah, it's a piece of corn.
Yeah. Let's talk about things that are getting lodged in you right now. China now is being sanctioned by President Jim Biden. 81 million votes, by the way. I haven't found one person that actually voted for him. But actually,
that's the way it always is.
The $10 bread lady that Nate and I met, she voted for him, and I could tell because she was a granola chick. But
I passed the people in the cars that have the Biden stickers on them. So
I like the ones that still have the Gore ones up. That's how you know you're dedicated. That's like a Grateful Dead fan that's like, not the new stuff. I like the old stuff.
Speaking of election deniers.
Sir, are you going to say our elections have been stolen before? Yes.
No, I'm just saying that everybody's, people are running around talking about election deniers. Every single election is questioned by somebody. Every single one.
Not the McCain one.
They're all, well, yeah.
When McCain ran against Obama, he was getting beat so bad it was over by 9 o'clock.
Well, right.
Like they were already like making paintings of his family.
It was like Reagan's re-election.
Yeah. Oh, that was the best because Mondale and Ferraro, and I was like, is this really a challenge? No. And Dukakis.
It was like they came on at 6 o'clock and said, well, we got nothing to talk about.
Yeah. Just in case we're going to run a rerun of Here's Your Life.
You can watch Maverick.
So the Biden put sanctions on China and for making chips for phones and cars and computers and all that. And then said if any American that's working over there, if you continue to work for these companies, you lose your citizenship to the United States. I guess in a law sense, dick move or not dick move?
I'd say it is.
What choice do you have? Because now it's like, okay, so if you keep working there for a paycheck, you're a traitor.
I don't really understand why we're trying to pick a fight with China, pick a fight with Russia. I just don't understand that. Why?
Well, I can tell you the move with China because Taiwan is where those chips are being made. So we're going to force China to take over Taiwan to say, hey, that's an act of war. Same thing we did with the Ukraine thing. That's an act of war. Even though they're burning and shooting your people on the Donbass, you are the problem for retaliating. It's kind of like in football when it's like a guy hits someone after the play. It's always the guy who hits second that gets caught, never the first guy. So always be the third guy to hit. No? Is that what this show stands by?
Second, third, something like that.
Well, how do you feel about that? When you see that, do you say, oh, we can't keep up with the demand here anyway, so aren't we sabotaging ourselves?
I'm not sure the sanctions work. Anyway.
No.
I mean, fundamentally, China needs the United States because we buy most of their crap. If China didn't need the United States, they'd have bailed on us already, I'm sure. But they need the United States. But the fact is, we need China too. I mean, we don't have any factories. We outsourced everything.
We don't make things.
We decided in the late 1980s that we were going to outsource all of our manufacturing to China, and we have. And personally, I think that we should rebuild that infrastructure, but you don't do that overnight. You don't do that. You don't say, okay, we're going to start producing steel here, and all the steel that we need, we're going to produce it all here, and have that happen by next Thursday, because it is Thursday. So you don't say that and have it happen. It takes time to build all that infrastructure. it strikes me that we've gone from any measure of diplomacy to we just make threats, and if people don't bow to our threats, then we're going to have a war. And it seems like that's our whole level of diplomacy. There's no effort, it doesn't seem, to go out and work things out so that everybody can kind of benefit and gain from it, because that's what they told us. And you're pretty young, so you probably don't remember the Clinton administration and the George W. administration, where they were telling us that all this offshoring and all this stuff was going to be good for the country. And
I remember NAFTA was going to open things up. It was to get cheaper goods, so you can go to Walmart and buy a whole outfit for $7.
Right, and so this was going to benefit us because we're taking some of the higher risk jobs, and so we can be more of a service based economy. I mean, this was all the story that they were telling us, and so now we've done all that, and so now we're going to pick a fight with the manufacturing company. That it doesn't make any sense to me. I don't understand why we don't use more diplomacy and try to work things out a little better. And I'm not saying that you just roll over and say, okay, China, you can have Taiwan. I'm not saying that at all. But
that's
what I
not
am
even
saying
what was
is,
on the board. They weren't trying to take you're forcing them to now.
Well, it kind of feels like you're picking a fight. It kind of felt like we were picking a fight with Russia in Ukraine, and it kind of feels like we're picking a fight with China over Taiwan. It's almost like I mean, when's the last time that we had any major government official go to Taiwan? Right? And now all of a sudden every freaking congressperson wants to go to Taiwan. Right. I mean, that doesn't make any sense.
A lot of lady boys there.
And maybe, but at the end of the day, why all of a sudden this keen interest in going to Taiwan? What's that all about?
I feel like that's what they did in Ukraine. Remember, they were like everybody, Mitch McConnell and Pelosi, and then Schumer. It's like, aren't you representing New York and California? Why are you in the Ukraine? Well, I had to bring this briefcase full of money. It reminds me of the movie Dodgeball. Do you remember the end when he opens the case and he goes, "Have you ever seen $1 million?" And he opens, it's just like 10 stacks of cash. It's so small. That's what I was thinking she was doing. Like, listen, Zelensky, look at all this money, and he's like, I don't even need to count that. That looks like there's 10 of those. But I don't understand the reason to. It's not like China's even provoked us or made threats to us. It's like, I'm going to say something stupid to you, and when you get mad, well, now I got to fight you because you're upset about something. Apparently, I don't understand the provocation to do all of these things, because you're forcing China, Russia, Turkey, Germany to all kind of look at each other and go, maybe we should be getting along better.
Well, yeah, I mean, and we talked before about the whole BRICS issue and that whole treaty and everything, and it seems like, to your point, our foreign policy is such that we're like daring them to form this thing. It's crazy, really. I don't see a like the reason for doing it can't. There's not a good reason for doing it. Is what I'm trying to say. Is you can call everybody who thinks that there's some nefarious reason a conspiracy theorist, but you cannot articulate a good reason for it. Right. It's impossible.
I do like when they have those press conferences and that Muppet that's up there, and they ask her something directly, and now she just goes, "I don't even understand the question. I'm moving on." Like before, they were just lying to you, and you were like, "Oh, cool, you're lying." So I'll just figure it out somewhere else. I don't think
before
they know.
They would just circle back.
The circling. Here's the
I
best.
missed the Circle Lake back, honestly.
You know what? When I'm being lied to,
That was one of the best parody songs ever, though. The
the
Circle Back Girl.
I just love that she would say, "We'll circle back," and she would point to somebody else, and it was like, "Oh, so you didn't blow me off? You're going to give me an answer tomorrow." And no one said, "Hey, are you going to answer that thing?" I got to circle back because I got to talk to somebody else. So next thing. Now they don't even they just blatantly lie.
They actually had Circle Back press conferences where she would answer all those questions. Just no one was invited.
Oh, I see. So the answer was probably like, because we said. I do want to get into this part that there was a report that came out about the U.S. military and what advantage we would have to enter a war with China or Russia. Did you see it? Our troops weak. Are the only thing we had out of 6 things: nuclear weapons, kick ass, go America. Yeah. Everything else is we would get destroyed.
From what I saw when they war gamed everything with China, we lose all those things pretty quickly.
Right.
Except if there's a nuclear war.
Right. That's the only thing we have.
And I'm like, what kind of suicidal maniac wants to enter into that? Honestly. So if we strike first and 40% of our population survives and none of theirs survives, what are we surviving for? What's going to be left after we nuke everything and they nuke everything?
I think because we're in the Midwest, I don't care. Because if they get anything, they're going to get New York, California, probably Florida.
So you're thinking that the Ohio River might become the Atlantic Ocean and you have some
And so I think it's like when Columbus was crossing over the seas and somebody will discover us. The rest of the world won't exist.
You mean Christopher Columbus?
Yeah. Which other Columbus did I mean? Actually, have you ever met anybody with the last name Columbus other than Christopher Columbus, who's the movie director?
He has a whole day, but everybody's trying to cancel Christopher Columbus.
Well, you know why? Because Bill Indigenous also sailed those seas, and now we have Indigenous Day on the same day.
Mm-hmm. Sorry, you know what's interesting? And this is just something that I know that is a random fact, but do you know why Columbus Day was formed?
So federal workers could go home and sleep with their mistress?
Well, there was that, but do you know where it came from? So Columbus Day was originally a regional holiday around New Orleans, and it was a celebration of when the Italians who had been enslaved by the French in that colony,
in the French Quarter,
in New Orleans and in that area, when they were released, they were freed. So Columbus Day was originally celebrating. It was originally surrounding the freedom of the end of slavery for Italians who lived in Louisiana.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Do you know that there's so they found these indigenous people, whatever, and so they are constantly saying "fuck Christopher Columbus" and flicking it off on the camera, and somebody underneath in the comments said, "Hey, these are just migrants looking for a better place to live. How bigoted of you to say that these people can't live here." Mm-hmm. And I know it was a snarky comment, but it was hilarious to think that.
Well, and people blame him for starting slavery, but the indigenous folks that went back with Christopher Columbus went voluntarily. They weren't enslaved. And when they got back to Spain, they weren't enslaved. They were kind of celebrities.
Right.
It wasn't like he was intending. Columbus himself was intending. Now, maybe it's a bad precedent. Probably is a bad precedent, right? But
we haven't stopped doing it in other countries,
right?
Like Haiti.
Right.
Haiti's the only country that's predominantly black that the slaves rose up and took their country back. Mm-hmm. And the U.S. came in and said, "Let me sprinkle some democracy on your tits." And then we have invaded that as well. We can't. Do you know how many times
Grenada? Don't forget Grenada. That was
how can I forget Grenada? It's one of my favorites.
It's an island. So at the time that we invaded Grenada, I remember a comedian, Will Durst. I don't know if you remember Will Durst. He said, "Yeah, we invaded a country whose main line of defense is a speed bump on the beach."
Right. Well, to me, I feel like what we're trying to do as the United States is treat everything as though it is everyone like it's an adversary. and no different than what the Spanish and Italians and French.
Pretty typical of empires. Yes.
Yes, but that's what I'm saying. We're going to spread our empire, and again, that never works throughout history. We have invaded Haiti 5 times since 1981. Every time they have a leader that gets in place that we put in there, by the way, somehow they come up missing. They just never wake up.
You know what the problem is? They speak French in Haiti.
So they're just rude.
Yeah.
They hate Americans. I bet they do hate Americans for a different reason than the French.
Well, they speak, yeah, but, you know.
Well, getting back to
Do you
people.
think that French people hate Americans?
So
I
from
think
what
we
I've
should
been
explore this. Do you know how much racism there is between countries in Europe?
Well, here's what I think is funny about this sensitive ass country we live in. If you go to any other country, you are a tourist and they are annoyed by you. Okay? Because Americans are seen as fat slobs that have no manners and all of that. And then
I
I
resemble that remark.
You and I both. We are the poster boy for being terrible, terrible house guests. But when you're looking at these things and you say, these countries are so much more civilized to some extent, right? And they're more cultured. What is our culture? Spider-Man and The View. Now, I love Spider-Man, but I'm just saying, all of our TV shouts at us or is constantly a kind of, again, a look at me kind of culture. Over there, they actually have museums that people go to. Now, they are throwing tomato cans on there saying they don't want fossil fuels and the world's going to end, but at least they have the museum to throw said pasta at.
Well, you know, the U.S. is a relatively young country in the scheme of the world. Most of the European countries have been around for centuries, and they've overrun each other for years and basically, you know, beat each other up for all these years.
But isn't that how that works, though?
So they're trying to the European Union is an experiment in Marxism that's probably not going to work out. But as far as the U.S., I mean, I think the U.S. has. I don't think the U.S. When we talk about U.S. culture, I think that there are. The U.S. is so big, and there are influences from so many different places that I think there probably are numerous. I saw one map that identified 11 different areas, just by area, in the U.S. that had markedly different cultural norms, and then within each of those areas, you have probably different subcultures running through that. Where I think in most other places in the world, they're much more homogenous, and so they don't have as much. They just don't have the diversity that there actually is here. I mean, you know, most European, like if you go to Germany, 85% of the people who live in Germany are German. If you go in the
30s and 40s, they did a good job of kind of weeding anybody else out.
If you go to most European countries, and I know that they're having a lot of refugees coming in from Africa and the Middle East because of things that are going on with in the Muslim world, but in Syria, But aside from the refugees, you still have societies that are pretty freaking homogenous. Russia has a very homogenous population. China has a very homogenous population. And you see what they do when they don't, like the Uyghurs, get rid of them.
Right.
I mean, so I think that we have some unique issues here in the U.S., and I think that honestly, for the most part, we've done fairly well at handling the diversity in hanging together as a country. And one of the things that, you know, we talk about all the stuff that the divisive things that are coming out where people are canceling each other and you can't say anything and all this kind of stuff. I really think that is counterproductive. The problem with that fundamental philosophy is they're claiming that they're overcoming they're overcoming these issues by amplifying the issues.
Right.
And I don't think it'll work. I think it'll make it worse. I think that as a whole, before that all started, like 2008, 2009, 2010, I think we were at a place where nobody really cared what color your skin was or what your sexual orientation was or what your country of origin. I don't think those things mattered much in the course of daily life, and I think that most people were pretty accepting of each other.
But then what happens in that time period?
Well, and I think the proof of that is you think in 2008 Obama got elected, so we had our first black president.
Haitian.
Tiger Woods was dominating golf. The sisters, the Williams sisters, were dominating tennis, and nobody cared, right?
Right.
Everybody was like, "Hey, that's awesome." And then sometime shortly after that, all of a sudden, you have people in the elites saying that everybody's a racist.
Right. But what happens during that same time period? So you have 9/11, right?
Right.
And then
Well, 9/11 was prior to that. But
I understand, but I'm saying let's take a full 20 years. 9/11 happens, and then it's anybody who's Muslim, right? That was the thing. If you were Muslim, you got to attack these people. To the point where they were telling us how bad that was. That wasn't a color, that was a religion. That was a way of thinking. In that time period, you have 4 different financial crises that happen. So as the middle class disappears, same thing in Germany, you got to find a scapegoat so they don't blame the government who oversaw these things. So attack each other. And that's all you're doing is you're dividing people by race and class so that they don't rise up against the people that are setting the policy that have put you there. So the more you see that stuff, television is worse for it because they tell you every day. There's always something racist going on. I mean, Nate and I were talking about Black Adam the other day. Now that movie's being attacked because it's not dealing with issues in Syria. This is a comic book written in 1946 that they're finally bringing to the big screen. Whether you like it or not everything has to be political. It doesn't have to be race. But if you are stuck on race or gender issues, you're focused on the wrong thing, and you're going to learn too late.
Well, and it's like, I think it was Morgan Freeman was being interviewed and the interviewer asked him if he thought there was still racism in America. And I think Morgan Freeman said, "Yeah, I think there are still elements of racism in America." And he says, "Well, what do you think we need to do to stop it?" And he said, "Stop talking about it."
Right. Right.
He said, "Just stop talking about it. Stop making it an issue."
That's a great way to end the show because we're going to stop talking about this show, Objections with Staniel Willis. See you next week.